is Jeremy Munson. I'm a representative from District 23B, just south of Mankato. And we're here today to discuss a resolution pertaining to an extremely important topic, which is vaccinations, and what happens when individuals are injured or killed by them. With me today are some fellow authors of 4 identical House resolutions, as well as some of the legislators who signed on in support. I'm proud to be standing with citizen lobbyists here who work tirelessly to promote this resolution here at the Capitol. In 1986, there were 7 vaccines that were routinely administered to the American children. Yet there were so many catastrophic injuries caused by this schedule that some of the vaccine manufacturers threatened to stop producing them due to this large damage awards that they were ordered to pay when people were injured. So pharmaceutical industry heavily lobbied Congress to pass the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act, or the NCVIA, in 1986. This unprecedented law established a compensation program administered by the government and funded by a tax on vaccine consumers themselves. This was to compensate those who were killed or harmed by vaccines. Now, there were some valuable requirements that were set up by this law, including the requirement that doctors report any adverse vaccine reactions to the new system that was set up called the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, and that doctors provide parents with the vaccine risk and benefit information before their children are vaccinated. This law also allowed the petitioners who did not receive a judgment within 240-day window that were not satisfied with the judgment by the NVCIP, that they could then withdraw from this program and sue the vaccine manufacturers in civil court. The option of suing in civil court was removed in 2011 with a Supreme Court decision in Bruzowitz versus Wyatt. Now, vaccine victims have no recourse but to petition the government for damages when harm occurs. Overturning this decision and returning the NCVIA to its original intent is what our resolution is about. This is an important check and balance that we have set up to ensure that vaccines will be safer. And we have some great speakers here to give you some more information about this law and what we're trying to do, and about how the compensation program created by it has completely deteriorated. So first, I have Senator Abeler who would like to give a few words.
Thanks. Well, thanks for being here, and thanks to all the people who will be attending. And so I'm going to offer a few comments, and we have to go solve government on the floor pretty soon here, so I'll be just leaving. I'm the chief author of one of the bills to create a resolution, Senate File 2781. And I'm here to lend my support to the concern that people have about giving any manufacturer liability protection from anything. Maybe it made sense back in the day when we had to have people provide vaccines, and I'm not here as an anti-vaxxer, I'm not a pro-vaxxer. I think that it makes sense for some people, like any other medication, that people should be informed and have the chance to know the good things and the bad things, and then select based upon what their family chooses. And I think people generally agree about that. But in this situation, we're talking merely about the liability side. It's amazing the amount of claims there have been, and you'll hear about that, and how torturous the route is to actually get a claim to be resolved and actually be paid out, and still there's multiple hundreds of millions of dollars and more than $1 billion, I think, in claims. And so, holy cow. And so we're in a world where the Department of Health calls them exceedingly safe, which I think nothing is further from the truth. And they're safe to some people. It's like a peanut allergy. Peanuts are safe to me. They're not safe to you. And nobody says everybody should eat peanuts. So you're like, well, if you have a problem with peanuts, then you should maybe be careful. And nobody disbelieves the peanut allergy family. Unfortunately, when somebody has a reaction to a vaccine, then they're somehow considered to be unbelievable. And so there are too many situations where people are harmed through what they thought was safe. And when the manufacturer has no liability for those unsafe reactions, then they're much more casual with their safety testing, and you'll discover as you look into it, that is absolutely the case. So,
do you think that gun manufacturers should also be protected from liability? Because they currently are by act of Congress.
That's a topic for a different, good question, though. I appreciate the joke.
So you're not pro-vaccine?
Well, anyway, so if you want to take them, please do. So anyway, I'm here to support the effort to alert the federal government to the fact that letting a product like this go forward without any real liability and with much less safety than there should be for any other drug is a problem. And so thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Senator Abeler. And up next, we have Mr. Knudsen. He's a partner at Knudsen Casey in Mankato. He handles personal injury and vaccine cases throughout the United States. He was named Attorney of the Year in 2011 and has served as president of the 6th District Bar Association. Mr. Knudsen was named a super lawyer by his peers for the last 9 years and is a board-certified civil trial advocate through the National Board of Trial Advocacy, and he's been lead counsel in more than 100 trials, and he handles anywhere from 35 to 50 clients at a time with cases in vaccine court. So, welcome, Randy.
Thank you. Good morning. Who am I? I'm Randy Knudsen. I'm an attorney. I practice in Mankato, Minnesota. I'm admitted and practice in vaccine court in Washington, D.C. Who are my clients? My clients, I have 35 to 50 folks injured by vaccines at any one time. Most of those clients are suffering from paralysis. They mostly have Guillain-Barré syndrome, or they have transverse myelitis from vaccines, including the flu shot, which I don't think is a vaccine, is a shot, because the flu shot actually does not provide herd immunity, or does it keep us off from ever getting the flu again. It's not eliminating the disease. We call it a vaccine, but it's really a shot. Most of my clients are adults. I rarely take cases with children because most of the families that call me say that their child got the vaccine set, that the child never talked to them again or looked at them again, and that is in the autism spectrum. And we tell those people who call us, we can't take your case because we can't win in vaccine court. There are no children who've ever won on a straight-up autism case. Who also are my clients? People who get more than 4 vaccines at one time. Obviously, when you get a vaccine, your body has to overcome that immune system, or your immune system has to overcome the vaccination. And if you get 4 to 8, there's a higher likelihood, in my opinion, or at least from what we see, that you'll have a problem. So what is vaccine court? Vaccine court is in Washington, D.C. It's run by special masters. It's funded by every vaccine that's given. 75 cents, I believe, is the current rate of every vaccine goes into a fund where there's billions of dollars to pay folks injured by vaccines. Vaccine court is almost secret court because almost nobody knows about it. Many of my clients just found by research online about it. They were never told about it. The Justice Department attorneys, and I know them all from working with them, they're great folks, they defend these cases. So I work with Justice Department attorneys every day who work for the Department of Health. And in most cases, we end up resolving the cases and they pay. And they agree that my clients were hurt by the vaccination, and so does the court. But many cases we fight over and we lose or we may win. The goal of this program, Vaccine Court, was to take those folks injured by vaccines. We want to keep vaccinating people, but let's take those folks and give them swift and generous compensation if they are hurt. The problem is that is not happening. In my 35 to 50 cases I have at one time, the average time is probably 3 years to get through them. I've had many clients die before we got to compensation. Some problems are you can't, once you're in the program, there's really no other remedy. You can't, because of the I can't ever say it, Bruzowitz decision, you can't sue the manufacturers. So you have vaccine court or nothing. So once you're in vaccine court, that's your only remedy. The court and the Justice Department are underfunded. They haven't been funded in some time. The attorneys tell me this all the time. On every case I have, I would say every case they ask for at least 3 or 4 continuances. So when we get ready to look at the case, we can't even get there. 3 or 4 continuances of 30 to 60 days. So it takes years and years for my clients to get compensated. It is not swift, it is not generous, and every year, because of budgetary concerns, fewer and fewer people get compensated by vaccine court. So my clients are largely either going uncompensated or it's being discounted. The Bruzowitz case was a Supreme Court case that said you can go into vaccine court, but you can't sue the manufacturers. And that changed in 2011 with the Bruzowitz case. Now, because the manufacturers can't be sued, there's no motivation for them to test for safety. Why would they test their vaccination for safety and possibly have bad results or even good results? Why would they even do it if they can't be sued? There's no reason for them to do it. And they don't ensure the safety of these products. And even worse, I rarely see the CDC or the manufacturers telling us if you get the flu shot, your chances of 1% or 0.1% of this happening to you, of you being paralyzed. No one's telling us that. They're just saying, take the shots, take the vaccines. No one is telling us what is the downside. And I think we all deserve that right to at least decide, hey, do I want to take this vaccination or not? Because sometimes the consequence is paralysis. And I have many clients who are paralyzed, and some of them died. There's a high level of pro-vaccine information out there. And if I say anything to anybody, even doctors I know, I'm ridiculed as anti-vaxxer. And that's not the case. I work in vaccine court trying to determine whether the vaccine caused an injury or not. I hire experts to help me with that. And we have cases where the special master and the Justice Department agree my client was injured from the vaccination. I'm not anti-vaxxer. But there's a lot of pro-vaccine information out there, and you almost hate to raise your voice and say, wait a minute, let's look at what could happen to you, because then I'm an anti-vaxxer. We can't get any discovery from the vaccine makers. Because we can't sue them, I can't see what's really going on. I can't see if they're testing these, none of us can. Because we can't sue them. If you sue somebody, you can subpoena records, you can look at records. We have no rights to do that right now. So whatever the vaccine manufacturers are doing, we have no way to check that. And the biggest issue I would say is, because of this lack of testing, I am not aware of any study that shows whether the vaccines are crossing the placenta or not for pregnant women. Pregnant women are vaccinated routinely, and we don't know what the result of that is because there's no testing. There's very little testing for children, particularly children given 4 to 8 vaccines at once. There's very little testing for vaccines for minorities. Many of our clients are minorities. We're not sure why it's an excessive number, but we think maybe there should be testing for that. So in summary, I work in vaccine court. I see people injured every day. If you don't believe people are injured by vaccine, start reading vaccine court decisions by special masters who start the case thinking you don't have a case. Because there's many decisions out there, and it's conceded by the Department of Health, the CDC, and the Justice Department. There are vaccine injuries, and it's happening. And we should at least have the information in front of us when we decide to get vaccinated. And I think one step would be to overturn the Bruzowitz case to allow us to see the testing that's going on. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for those comments. And we also have Wayne Rohde would like to share a few words on this topic as well.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Wayne Rohde. I'm a father of a vaccine-injured child who's now 21. He was injured at the age of 13 months. I'm here to talk about the specifics of Bruzowitz versus Wyatt Labs, the U.S. Supreme Court ruling that was handed down in February 2011 on a 6-2 vote. Justice Kagan abstained to allow the federal government to basically preempt federal law and prevent petitioners who were allowed to exit the program after 240 days if they did not receive a final decision and file a suit in state court or federal court for damages. It was imperative that this ability to file suit, Congress intended to have this option. Matter of fact, the strongest pharmaceutical ally in Congress, Representative Henry Waxman, during the debate back in 83, 84, 85, and even up to 86, he even wanted this option. He demanded that this option be included in the legislation. Bruzowitz is about a little girl. Her name is Hannah. She received the DPT vaccine back in 1992 and immediately developed seizures, was later hospitalized for several weeks, and was diagnosed with residual seizure disorder. She continues to suffer from seizures today and has developed the disorder and extensive brain damage, and she requires constant care. Hannah's parents filed a petition in the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program in the fall of 1995. Unknown to the parents when they filed the petition, 1 month prior, HHS Secretary Don Shalala, and this is in the second administration of the Clinton administration, removed residual seizure disorder from the injury table. Vaccines at the time when they were added to the program, known injuries were included. And these are the injuries that you can then decide, the program would decide whether or not they should be compensated. Secretary Shalala removed residual seizure disorder from the DPT vaccine, thus forcing Hannah and thousands of other petitioners to start to litigate their petition, which means they have to prove causation, bring in medical experts, extensive attorney actions. Instead of going from a 1 year or 1.5 years from filing to compensation, these first petitions were taking 4, 5, even up to 10 years, and then they were being dismissed. 3 years after filing the petition, the manufacturer of that specific DPT withdrew their product off the market because of their, what they call their known vaccine design reporting, what they call post-marketing surveillance reporting in VAERS. They saw a tremendous number of injuries being filed there. Today, the program is very litigious, very adversarial. It was about childhood vaccines, and as Representative mentioned, there were 7 vaccines. Today, it's all about adults. Randy Knudsen spoke about almost all of his clients are adults. 90% in the last 5 years of all cases filed and compensated are adults. Children petitions of all injuries are being dismissed. The Bruzowitz, after their petition was dismissed, or they elected to dismiss it, they filed a lawsuit against Wyatt in state court in Pennsylvania. This is approximately 2005. They claim the manufacturer failed to develop a safer vaccine and should be held accountable for preventable injuries caused by the vaccine defective product design. Wyatt was able to remove the case to federal court, where the judge dismissed the case, ruling that the program, the vaccine court, protected Wyatt from lawsuits over product defective design claims. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit affirmed the federal district court's ruling. The parents then filed a writ of certiorari asking the Supreme Court to look at this case. They agreed to hear Bruzowitz versus Wyatt Labs, along with Ferrari versus American Home Products, which was a thimerosal case, both raising the issues of alleged vaccine design defects. In February of 2011, the Supreme Court ruled 6-2 that the exclusive remedy for all defective product design or injuries must go through the program. So the question remains, and this is what the resolutions are asking Congress to do, is to override the Supreme Court decision and remove Bruzowitz to allow petitioners to file suits in state or federal court. So the question remains, can a federal law shield of vaccine manufacturers from certain product liability lawsuits in civil court, state or federal, that seek damages for serious health problems suffered by our children because of defective designed products? That question still remains, and that's what we're asking in these resolutions.
Thank you. So that wraps up the speakers that will be talking today. And I just want to add that I'm also not anti-vaccine. I am for making sure that we have a balance in the system that allows vaccine manufacturers to be held accountable if their products are dangerous. If everyone believes that vaccines are safe, that they cause no injury or they can't cause injury, then there should be no problem with lifting this or going back to the law that we used to have that allowed people to seek civil cases against vaccine manufacturers. This is about making sure that we have every product out there that's safe. It's like auto manufacturers are held liable if their product is defective in design. We want the same thing to be held for vaccines. So that will stand for questions, and we also have some citizen lobbyists here that would also like to answer questions if there are any. Representative Lucero just joined us too. I believe he's a co-author on one of these bills. There's two bills in the House. Myself, I'm an author of House File 2825, and Representative Heinzman is House File 2862. We were just talking about the vaccine liability. So if there's any questions, we'll feel free to ask them.
Is there a path forward for any of these bills yet this session?
Well, let's see if it would go into the Health and Human Services omnibus bill. There certainly could be in conference committee. But, this is really about policy. And, our policy year, we'll be getting most of the stuff done. Will be next year. So I hope to make sure we get more people to sign on to these bills over the interim and see if we can get a hearing next session.
What's the damages that the vaccine court is giving out in a given year?
It was 79.
In its totality, it's $4.1 billion. Since it started, October 1 of 1988 was the first open for business date. Last year, they paid over about $260 million in damages and attorney fees and medical expert fees.
Question, I noticed here that Congress, as part of this 1986 law, that Congress was charged the HHS with being able to report those studies, but those studies haven't been reported. So who's overseeing those studies that need to be reported that Congress, as a result of this act, asked them to do?
Part of the statutes of the act required the Secretary of HHS to conduct vaccine safety studies. And you're referring to probably a lawsuit earlier this year from Robert Kennedy Jr., where we found out that those studies were not sent to Congress. There was actually a couple studies done, but they just weren't sent to Congress. So the question really is, why isn't Congress, through their oversight duty, not demanding these studies? Maybe Congress doesn't have the appetite for it, or they don't want to take it on because it's a politically charged issue. I don't know. But Congress has failed the American public here too.
Any other questions? Okay. Well, I think it's really important. This issue's become more important this year as we've seen many states remove exemptions from people. So there's many states in municipalities where people are no longer having an option not to receive vaccinations. And when government removes your choice, then they're having to compel you to be vaccinated. We want to make sure that these products are as safe as possible, and that's why we're really bringing this forward, this resolution this year. So, any other questions? Otherwise, we'll thank everyone.
Why did you sign on to this, and why did some of the other legislators sign on to this? Do you have vaccine-injured children yourself, or just know of them? I know Wayne spoke to that a bit. But.
Yeah, so for me, I'm a small government Republican, and I like not having a lot of regulations. And when there's a mandate, when there was legislation brought forward in the Senate this year, I think in the House too, to remove exemptions, remove people's choice, that's frightening to me. Because then you picture government basically compelling you or vaccinating your children at gunpoint or taking your children away from you if they're not vaccinated. That's not a free society. And when I looked into when I'm meeting with people whose children were damaged by vaccines, it's and understanding that they have no incentive to make their products safer because they have this shield that allows them to continue to go forward and make their products as cheap as possible without regard for safety, that's concerning. And so I signed on to this because this brings a necessary balance to the system that if their product's not safe and they can be sued, then they'll work to make their product safer.
Let's say that you don't think that there should be, people should be compelled to vaccinate. Let's say that 3/4 of all people decide not to vaccinate their children. What do you think the effects of that would be?
I don't think we would ever get to a point where 3/4 of people would choose not to vaccinate. And if you're, I mean, there's dozens and dozens of vaccinations out there, and some diseases have been completely eradicated. Some diseases, you have to vaccinate so many hundreds or thousands of people in order to prevent one person from, receiving an illness that maybe not be fatal. So we have to understand the, look at the numbers to, I mean, if you disclose to people what the rate of return is on a vaccination and they accept it, I think that there's most people will vaccinate their children, but we have to be able to allow people a choice of not vaccinating. Yep. Yeah. Anybody else want to comment better than I can? Because
That was well said.
yeah.
He's gone.
Okay.
And I'm Kristen Sullivan, and this bill is, or this resolution is really to put liability back onto the pharmaceuticals. It's not whether or not you should vaccinate, it's really about liability back onto pharma. So if you are injured by a vaccine, that you can sue just like you can for any other product.
Yeah, and I also want to add, we're not passing law here. This is a resolution asking Congress to act. I want this conversation to happen at the federal level, and I want all the players to come to the table and have a discussion and make it public so people understand that there is a risk, and let's figure out how we can make vaccines safer. That's what this is about. We're not changing the law here at the state.
To your knowledge, are any other states also using this approach?
Yeah, I believe that other states have passed this, or it's coming through.
Washington State. We have,
Pennsylvania introduced it last year. There's a few others.
And there's several other states looking into it currently.
Yeah, in 1986, it was well-intentioned, and then it was changed through the courts. I think we should just go back and look and see what the results are and have an honest conversation about how many people are being damaged by vaccines, and also how difficult it is to prove that damage in court. Okay? Any other questions? All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming today.